Hey guys, this is Dev66 here. Today I'm going to be going over the two games of Ghost Recon Wildlands and Ghost Recon Breakpoint. Today I'm going to be breaking down which one I prefer, who had the better graphics, which one did a little bit more best in terms of the mission wise, and some other things. So without further ado, let's get right into it. Now, I'm 100% my opinion, I do believe that Wildlands does have the best missions. The reason why I say that is just because of the fact that you were already so drawn into it that it pretty much dialed down to who these cartel members were. You even dug into mission briefs with Karen Bowman on how these Sicarios were, pretty much a little bit of their life story as well as who they were in the fucking Kingpin. And I think that was actually pretty cool to actually experience it because it felt like you were in an actual operation as well. Now again guys, I'm not scripting this, I'm just free flowing with this, so bear with me. Versus compared to Breakpoint, you know, you don't really get attached to the missions at all. It just felt like you didn't even really have to be there. It was just kind of all bland. And I think the only thing that really caught my attention was probably just seeing Nomad and Walker and going back in time. I think that was the only thing that actually caught me, or kind of at least got me a little bit hooked onto it, as well as the ending when you kill Walker. But I think the winner for best mission and story has to go with Wildlands. Now for graphics wise, it automatically goes to Breakpoint just because of the fact it is a newer game and it felt more smoother and more, I guess, more kind of alive, I guess you can say. And compared to Wildlands, you know, yes, it is still a little bit older, but it had a decent amount of graphics, but it just didn't run as smooth as compared to Breakpoint. And the fact that it went so much into detail in Breakpoint when you would roll in the mud, or I'm sorry, I think it was prone camo, yeah, prone camo, you know, it definitely got the details in there. Compared to Wildlands, you didn't really have that. And also when you were shooting or even going through dense environments, your M4 and Breakpoint would eventually get ruined. You'd constantly have to repaint it or repair it, I guess you could say. And compared to Wildlands, you never really had that. And so again, graphics has to go to Breakpoint. Now the big thing that also separates the two games is definitely the weapons and customizations that Breakpoint has to offer compared to Wildlands. Wildlands, you're very limited on very certain things, and I think that's what some of the players don't like, is just because of the fact that you are very strict. I think there's only maybe, I want to say at least 20, I may have to go back and count it, but I think there's only 20 different types of vests in Wildlands compared to Breakpoint where you have numerous, and as well as different types of headgear. And the way how you're able to customize your weapons in Breakpoint is a lot more different compared to Wildlands. And I think with that, a lot of people tend to cling on to more Breakpoint just because of the fact that you're able to make the weapon more of your liking and control recoil, you know, accuracy, range, and all that other stuff. Versus Wildlands, you had to deal with whatever you had and someone trying to make it to your personal preference, but it was kind of hard. Now in terms of gunfights, I would have to say Wildlands definitely takes the cake for that one, just because of the fact that we have so much AIs or AI civilians and AI combatants that these two definitely pull in together at a good ratio, I guess you can say. And what I mean by that is the fact that when a gunfight broke out, the civilians would get scared, some of them would run away, some of them would just duck then run away, and sometimes the cartels would actually move towards or around or even sometimes next to a civilian, and you would have to be careful when you shot, just because of the fact that if you hit a civilian and they die, I think you only had maybe 3 tries before the game was over. And I think that was very unique and made it a little bit difficult for Wildlands, especially if there were definitely civilians around, you would have to just constantly watch your aiming, versus Breakpoint, where I think it just varied just because of the fact that if you had the gear weapon on, or gear level I should say on, it just made it more of like who had the biggest firepower and other stuff. But I do strongly believe that Wildlands definitely had a good environment to actually have a gunfight in, versus Breakpoint, where the environments there as well, it just didn't really, I guess, stack up to Wildlands, which also goes to my next category of environments. Now, environments, Wildlands definitely also has to go and take the cake, because of the fact that Wildlands, especially when you look at the environments, you had jungle warfare, you had winter warfare. In the middle of the map, you had somewhat of a naval warfare, I guess you can say, but not really. But then you also had the assaults. I believe it was like a assault area in one of the regions, as well as, you know, most of it was desert. And so having all those biomes or ecosystems come together as one, and especially in Bolivia, definitely was able to pull it off, and it definitely taught you how to, I guess, battle in different environments. And don't get me wrong, Breakpoint kind of had that, but it was just mostly like woodland / jungle warfare, very little desert. And I would say for winter it was I guess you can say. And it's just the fact that, I don't know, it just didn't really fit right in Breakpoint. It just felt like it was more meant for, again, jungle / woodland warfare, just because you had a good majority of that right then and there. And the fact it was also on an island, versus Bolivia, which is an actual place. And I believe, yeah, Breakpoint was in a row, which is a fictional place. So if they were looking for jungle warfare, definitely Breakpoint. But in terms of having the right environments and ecosystems compiled so well together, Wildlands. Now I think the AIs in Wildlands are way more fun compared to the ones in Breakpoint, because in Wildlands the AIs interact with the environment. They, especially if you do reconnaissance on an outpost, or you're talking to, or Nomad is talking to Bowman, I should say, and they're talking about some head honchos and other stuff, and you're done doing a mission brief, you know, the AIs will actually interact with you and interact with some enemies that you see. And you know, it just made it more interesting compared to Breakpoint, where, you know, they only talk to Nomad in comms when you're, you know, freaking scanning an area and you see enemies, and that was it. Versus, you know, having, you know, Midas, Weaver, and Holt, you know, talking to Nomad, and they're all engaging and talking, and just felt more, I guess you can say, more cozy, I guess, and versus having awkward silence in Breakpoint. And yeah, I just think, you know, for a Ghost Recon game, especially when you have AI teammates that are able to interact with environments, I think that they should have the right to express themselves, like how Midas does with cocaine, I should say, in Wildlands, when he's talking about the altitude, and you know, Nomad tells him to shut up. I think it was very funny compared to, you know, Breakpoint. All they call you or acknowledge you is when you freaking get a headshot, and they just say nice shot. And I just think that's very boring. And I think it's just some of the conversations that they have in Wildlands is also very interesting, in my opinion. What I do like about Breakpoint, though, is the different types of classes that they have, like Panther, Pathfinder, and Sharpshooter. I know there's a lot more, but I haven't really like looked at all the classes. And that's the one thing that I will give Breakpoint, is the fact that you have different classes and different abilities, and I always loved Pathfinder just because of the fact that you always had a UAV, and for me to have that type of power where I can throw down airstrikes and, you know, diversion lures and scan the area as well. And I just thought it was very unique in that way, because everyone can have a different type of ability, especially if you're playing with your friends. But I think what I also like most of all too, in terms of Wildlands, because I can't leave that out too, which is also different, is the fact that in Wildlands you were able to call rebels for backup, and mortar strikes and diversions with some of the fucking rebels. And versus Breakpoint, you didn't have that type of a perk or a class, I should say, that had that. And I think I like what those two did in terms of trying to make up for the classes for the perks that you had in Wildlands. But I think Wildlands definitely made it more unique, more of a type of a realism type special ops environment for a Milsim compared to Breakpoint, where, you know, you had your own class and you had some resources, I guess you can say. But definitely I do like the classes from Breakpoint. That is one thing I will give Breakpoint, is the fact that you're able to change different classes. And especially if you're trying to do it for a Milsim, where I see a lot of people try to do it on Milsims, definitely makes a huge difference compared to Wildlands. But I think all in all, if I had to choose which game to play the most, I would probably have to say Breakpoint, just because of the fact that one, it's a newer game, two, there's unique abilities as well as a weapons wheel, which I think Wildlands definitely does need, or especially the new Ghost Recon game, if they do come out with another one, they definitely need to have that, just because it's very unique. And especially if you're trying to play it in a realism type mode, that weapon wheel does help. But again, I would like to hear you guys in the comments what your guys' favorite preference for which game you guys like, whether it be Ghost Recon Wildlands or Breakpoint. I want to know why too. And then tomorrow I might go over a video of like what, hopefully sorry guys, I can't really talk today, but hopefully what they can add in the next Ghost Recon game, if they do choose to make one. But again guys, this is it for the video. Anyway, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and I'll catch you guys all in the next video.